Greetings, I'm Mikhail Chester, and on behalf of our leadership team, I'm happy to introduce our presentation on social, ecological, and technological resilience convergence in support of climate adaptation. Some brief context first. Evidence is amassing of the tremendous vulnerabilities to cities to climate change. It's also become clear that cities are complex systems composed of social, ecological, and technological processes with tensions, leverage points, and tipping points. Yet resilience framings tend to be isolated to a subset of urban systems. Our core research question, therefore, is how do SETS domains interact to generate vulnerability or resilience to climate-related extreme events? And how can urban SETS dynamics be guided along more resilient, equitable, and sustainable trajectories? We're grounding our project by embedding ourselves in 4 cities: Atlanta, New York, Phoenix, and San Juan. These cities represent a diversity of extreme climate events, infrastructure, ecology, people, and governance processes. An adaptation solution to flooding in Atlanta may not translate wholly to Phoenix, as SETS characteristics and dynamics will differ between the 2 cities. Furthermore, in each city, we partner with a diversity of stakeholders who help steer our research and support our knowledge co-generation activities of transformative pathways. Our phase 1 and 2 activities are visualized year by year. You'll see us reference this figure throughout the presentation. I'll first overview our phase 1 accomplishments and then phase 2 goals. First, how are we organized? And how do we achieve our convergence objectives? Our leadership team meets weekly to discuss strategy, progress, and overall direction. Our capacity building team includes the broader network and is organized into working groups. Each working group meets bi-monthly and now involves many unfunded collaborators from around the world. In our capacity building meetings, we work on resilience convergence by discussing differences in theories, progress in city research, or exploration of concepts presented by a resilience thought leader. So far, these thought leaders have included Carl Foke from the Stockholm Resilience Center, Nikki Franceschi from UT Melbourne, Kostas Samaras from Carnegie Mellon, Ajo Amakuzi-Kennedy from Georgia Tech, Mary Yulbein from Texas Christian University, and David Woods from The Ohio State University. So what have been some of the challenges and opportunities in a time of COVID? We've shifted many of our planned meetings and workshops to virtual formats, which has caused some delay, for instance, in Atlanta in initiating the scenario workshops. However, we have accelerated some of our activities. For example, modeling is ahead of schedule. And we have even been able to build a strong database on SENT dimensions for our cities and even developed research on the impact of the pandemic on infrastructure. Some of those papers shown here. By the numbers. There are roughly 43 researchers currently in the network, some funded and some unfunded. They span 11 institutions and include 14 students and 7 postdocs. In our first 2 years, we've published 36 journal articles with many more in review, have conducted 32 full network activities, including SETS convergence capacity building discussions and scenario visioning workshops. In total, there have been over 100 participatory and working group convergence meetings. We've also produced 59 non-journal products, some of which we'll describe shortly. We're now going to briefly overview our phase 1 accomplishments. Our phase 1 accomplishments fall into one of 4 categories: theory development, modeling and visualization, governance analysis, and scenario development. On the theory development side, we've been reconciling SENT resilience theory across domains. They're similar in different properties, and framing SETS resilience for urban adaptation to climate change. We've also been invited to submit a PNAS paper on SETS resilience theory. On the modeling and visualization side, across our cities, we've developed commensurate models of power, water, transportation, and building systems to assess vulnerabilities to extreme events for future adaptation pathways. The models are based on cutting-edge synthetic algorithms that give us neighborhood-scale insights into infrastructure interdependencies and use where data are generally unavailable. We've also created projections of heat and flood exposure combined with land use, land cover change scenarios to assess future extreme event risk for future infrastructure scenarios. On the governance analysis side, we've analyzed governance networks that address resiliency and associated actor agency, including visions, mental models of system vulnerabilities, institutional structures, and decision-making processes that are essential to navigate transformational changes in future scenarios. And on the scenario development side, we've employed participatory visioning to co-develop future scenarios of resilient infrastructures. Our phase 2 goals going forward involve the application of our SETS resilience convergence theory and SETS city data sets and visualizations into our core convergence work. Here we plan to work with city practitioners to explore scenarios of future extreme events in SETS resilience strategies, identify barriers to SETS implementation, and assess how SETS strategies can improve adaptation. This will involve the development of a researcher practitioner transdisciplinary process supported by our phase 1 accomplishments. Furthermore, we plan on synthesizing outcomes of future simulations and scenarios in an online interactive researcher practitioner visualization platform as a decision support tool. Our products are diverse and we think creative, offering new approaches to SETS resilience that can reach broad audiences. Beyond journal publications and data sets, we've created a visualization platform that can bridge S, E, and T variables for adaptation planning. That's shown in the top left here. In the top right, the ECOS board game was developed for teaching cooperation and managing tensions across SETS. The bottom left, you can see 2 books that we've produced that explore urban and infrastructure futures. One by myself, Urban Infrastructure Reflections for 2100, that includes 40 infrastructure experts from around the world. And on the left, Resilient Urban Futures by many of our leadership team members. And both of these books lean heavily on the SETS framework. And on the bottom right, you'll see a climate equity XR mobile app that gives users in neighborhoods the ability to visualize S, E, and T variables as they relate to equity and climate live. Furthermore, we've even released 2 podcast series, one on infrastructure in the Anthropocene and another on governance for adaptation. I'm now going to turn it over to Tisha Munoz-Erickson, who will discuss our convergence activities, progress, and plan.
Thank you, Mike. Through our phase 1, our team has been deliberate about observing, evaluating, and even measuring progress towards convergence. For instance, we have continued to use the tool shared with us at the first PI meeting to assess our convergence evolution. Building on previous collaborations, we started as a strong team in the collaborative multidisciplinary working space, shown here in blue, such that we could easily collaborate and share expertise across disciplines. Through our work in phase 1, we have moved into the emerging convergence space in green, in which we are creating new frameworks and language. This is happening, for example, in the convergence capacity building meetings that Mike described before, where we are enabling conditions for our team to work together on these very complex and uncertain problems. We're now on our way to consolidating convergence and deconvergence through productive, integrated teams that are essential for the emerging new insights that are greater than the sum of the individual disciplinary parts. Another important way that we capture and measure our convergence evolution is by mapping the connections and interactions of our team and our knowledge using social network analysis tools. This involved asking all 43 participants in the network about who others in the network that they collaborate with regularly on research activities. So the image on the left shows all the members of our network as nodes and the connections between them. So you can see that the network shows a high level connectivity across all team members, and this is regardless of their position in the network. So in addition to having researchers interacting with other researchers, you have research student connections, student postdoc connections, and so on. We also use this as a way to map our knowledge and identify and assess what different expertise our team members bring and how they are connecting to each other towards convergence. In this case, we show the nodes in different colors to represent knowledge of different SETS domain. And you can see that the network, again, is very diverse in this respect, and the connections are happening across different disciplines. But we also expect that as we move forward into phase 2, that this network will change and disciplinary convergence will increase over time. So as an illustration, if you look to the image to the right, this is kind of like a zoom in into one of our newer research members, Doctora Elvia Melendez Ackerman from the University of Puerto Rico. She just joined our team and she comes more from an ecological disciplinary background, and the current connections she has to our team are also in the more ecological, social ecological background. But we expect that once she interacts more with our team and as we're doing activities in phase 2, that she'll be interacting with more people from the social and technology and ST, and her own network will become more diverse and look more colorful after some time. Next slide. We also have 3 settings or modes of convergence. So the first one is among our SETS researcher team, and that is what I just talked about in terms of our our progress of convergence in our own research network, but also central to our work is our network of practitioners and researchers. So as we move from phase 1 to phase 2, the convergence setting will also evolve in terms of who we're engaging with and how, and the different expertise we're bringing together, both locally in the cities as well as with our researchers. In this way, in phase 2, the goal is to strengthen and build capacity for convergence among our practitioners and researchers within our city teams, and continue the emphasis on convergence among S, E, and T expertise for deep convergence. And then in year 3, we're adding cross-city SETS learning activities and build a network of practitioners. Therefore, we expect that the network and the knowledge map that I just showed you in the previous slide will actually expand, have more nodes, have more diversity of expertise, as we're also adding practitioners from all our city into our network during phase 2. Moving into the convergence research settings for phase 2, we're adding assessment and transition labs that will build upon the work from phase 1, where we're taking stock of SETS knowledge and co-developing pathways that envision transformative change. And we're going to leverage these synthetic data sets and products to phase 2A and phase 2B to evaluate those pathways and identify the capacities that are needed to adapt and transform urban systems. For instance, in Atlanta, we're using assessment labs to bring our synthetic infrastructure data set and our city practitioners together to analyze existing vulnerabilities in infrastructure and explore interconnections in that infrastructure under multiple climate scenarios using the SETS framework. We have also begun developing our transition labs, where the emphasis is on fostering and building capacity for more resilient cities. For some examples, in New York, for instance, we're working with the mayor's Office of Climate Resiliency to integrate the scenario visioning into their upcoming climate adaptation roadmap. Similarly, we are working with city partners in Atlanta to develop their sustainability plan and with the city of Phoenix on their climate action plan. To highlight one example even further, in San Juan, we're working with the Alianza por la Cuenca del Río Piedras, a coalition of agency, NGOs, scientists, and residents that are trying to address the pervasive flooding problem in San Juan through more adaptive and integrated watershed management in the context of post-Hurricane Maria disaster recovery planning. However, they're facing the challenge of existing infrastructure proposals that are trying to narrow the problem of flooding in a more risk mitigation space of looking only at fluvial flooding and focus on just hard solutions, such as channeling the rivers with cement. And so they are worried that this approach may end up limiting more general system resilience and adaptability that could be brought in by a more integrated approach to recovery planning. So with our integrated data sets and guidance of a SETS framework, we're helping the Alianza open up that problem space from what right now is mainly focused on T or a technological approach to reduce risk, to consider the complexity of the fluvial, the pluvial, and coastal flooding that happens in an urban watershed, its relationship to land use planning, and human behavior and decisions across different scales. Our goal in the transition labs with the Alianza is that by bringing in new expertise, all the way from citizen knowledge to government sectors expertise, we explore strategies and interventions across the S, E, and the T domains that involve, in addition to infrastructure, new forms of governance, incentives, behavioral change, new forms of new knowledge infrastructures, and social justice considerations. In conclusion, we would like you to hear directly from one of our city partners in New York, Adam Paris, so he can describe the interaction of him with the researchers through stakeholder-driven research, and this is also illustrative of our work in other cities.
Hi, I'm Adam Paris, the Deputy Director for Climate Science and Risk Communication at the Mayor's Office of Climate Resiliency in New York City. We are absolutely thrilled to be working with the folks on the SETS Convergence project team. It will directly influence the city's first dedicated climate adaptation plan, if not be really a foundational process, which it's looking to be. So we find this collaboration invaluable. It's really a huge step forward in terms of taking New York City farther with its climate resiliency and adaptation efforts. And we look forward to working with the SETS Convergence team.